So right now, the threat model of CPA is the device is under your possession. So if we just summarize, so let me just find my cursor. So high data complexity, we capture many traces. So we have a huge storage. And we don't use solvers or algebra or stuff like that to find the key. We use the same statistical methods we used for the timing attack, but we use them. We need to adopt them to the fact that we don't have a scalar, but they have a huge vector. I'll show you how to adopt them. It's possible. And so the advantages that first of all, we don't need reverse engineering. We get this from the timing attack. An advantage is that we can cope with noise well because the statistics help us. The DPA, DEMA, exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. So DPA is for power analysis. EM is for electromagnetic analysis. You had a very, very good lecture about it last week, and you might be motivated after this course to listen to it again, and maybe you'll try to get a deeper understanding of this fantastic talk by Stjepan. So these are the advantages. And because you're looking at the middle of the signal, you can also get more data out than you could get using a timing attack, which only looks at the overall sum of operations. So countermeasures you can be defeated. But the disadvantage, again, it's a serious disadvantage, is that the attack model is different. So you need to justify it somehow. Maybe you own the device, but it's harder to justify than the timing attack or the single trace technique attack. Here is an open question for you. If I can only attack devices that I own, that I have in my possession, then what's the point? I mean, I have the device anyway. Why would I want to break a device that I own? Does anybody have an idea? Okay, so yeah, of course, the device might be adversarial to you, right? The device might try to restrict you from getting something like money or access or the movies you want or something like that. And Stav is saying something very, very deep. You might be trying to do what is called a break once, run anywhere. For example, if I attack a remote control on my car, and I can now break into all of the cars manufactured in the same year, actually happened, then it's what's called break once, run anywhere. Another idea is that maybe there is a DRM, so I don't want to view the movie, I want to copy the movie and save it and sell it and so on. So there are several legitimate cases where you might want to break into a device that you have in your position. But the attack model is different. This is a weakness. So now let's talk about this until the end of the class. So my plan is to give you DPA from beginning to the end, and to inspire you to learn about CPA yourself, because this is how the course is forming up this year. It's a graduate course. You can do the homework assignment, use DPA alone. You don't have to know CPA, but you will get the competitive advantage. CPA is better, it's more efficient in using the data. So if you want to have a battle for who gets it with the highest difficulty, probably you will get a nice advantage if you're using CPA. So now the biggest and most complex thing with understanding with going from timing attacks to DPA CPA is the fact that we have to start thinking in multi-dimensions. And let's just give you a little figure that can kind of motivate you. So we had, as analysts, the following data structure when we were attacking a timing attack. Okay, so we had D traces. So we accessed our device D times. D times we sent it a challenge and we got a response. Okay, we sent it something to sign, we got a signature. Okay, so we sent it the inputs. So first of all, our first data structure as analysts is an array of size D with the inputs. So the input could be an AES plaintext, so I could have 16 bytes, 16 times D. This is my inputs, first data structure. Okay, and my second data structure is an array of D times 1, which is the timing that I got. So each time I sent an input, got a timing. Sent another input, got another timing. Right? So this is my data structure when I was doing timing attacks. And I was promised that this data is good. So the secret is hiding inside this data. What does that mean? If I had a key hypothesis, if I had the right key, it would be supported. So I would get this nice separation. We'll recap Vaisata this week again in case you forgot this. No, don't worry. So mitigation and not prevention. What you're saying is in what sense? Mitigation and prevention. So you're saying okay. Oh, we could get the key. No, we were attackers. We got an extra side channel. We weren't supposed to get the key out. We were cheating because we're side channel analysts. We got the timing. We weren't supposed to get the timing because we were looking at the timing. But we know that even though there's a huge amount of noise by all the other calculations running, if the key, well, if we split it correctly, then every time there was an extra Montgomery reduction, the trace was a tiny little bit longer. We know that. This is what I'm trying to say. So it's a data of D type. Now, on the other hand, if we look at, so if we just very, very briefly recap what we did there, we had a key hypothesis. We're trying to guess one bit of the key. And what we said is that if we guessed one bit of the key correctly, we could simulate one extra step of the encryption operation, which was using an unknown key, but we just guessed one bit. And we could say that some of the encryption operations had an extra reduction set, an extra subtraction. And that means that they took a tiny little bit longer to run. We took all of these traces, which we thought would take a tiny little bit extra time to run, and put them in a heap on one side. And then we took all the remaining traces and put them on another heap on the other side. So now we actually split our traces into two sets. One of them we thought would take a longer time, and one of them we thought would take a shorter time. And then we tested our hypothesis using students t-test. We just checked, did we actually get something meaningful when we separated our traces into two sets? This is how we did it in time. And once we were convinced that we got a meaningful separation, we moved on to attack the next bit, and so on until we got the entire key. Or we failed, but again. So if we look at low data complexity, our data structure is, it's a line, it's a row. We have one input, could be 16 bytes, for example, it's AES. And then we have a huge trace, very, very long trace, but there's only one trace. And another input about this, another insight about this trace is that if you're thinking about the decoder, now let's try to think about the decoder. Most of this trace is useless. It's effectively useless, right? It's not helping me do the attack. Right? So one question. Oh. One question. One second. Right. So when I'm doing, if in fact, when I was building my decoders, I had an army of decoders, but each one of the decoders was only looking at a very small amount of the trace. The rest of it was useless for the decoder. So now if I combine the two, I'm going to do high data complexity attack. And now my data structure looks like this. I have D traces. So each one of these traces has its own input, own associated, like what is the plaintext. But I don't have one scalar saying the time. I have a huge array millions of points with this power trace, right? So this is my data structure. Do you understand why I have this array looking thing? Why I have this data structure? Okay, so when I was using timing, I only had one data point per measurement. I got the timing. When I was doing low data complexity, I had a huge set of measurements, but I only had one measurement. I had like a vector size measurement, but I only had one measurement. So when I'm doing high data complexity, I have an array of measurements. I have d measurements. Each one of them is quite large. So now, do you have access to the time? If you want to, I can have access to the time. Doesn't matter. It's okay with the threat model. You can measure it. So now I want to kind of 1 second. I'm making a surprise for you. So this is why I keep tabbing on. Don't worry, it's a cool surprise. So if I look at this array, and now I'm going to fix. Oh, okay. 2 seconds. If I just fix the time, let's start with fixing the data. Okay, I'm now looking at only a single measurement. If I fix this, so I now get something which is equivalent to the template attack situation. Capiche, right? So I only have one data point. I have its associated input, and I get this measurement over time. So this is equivalent to the template attack. But now a little more tricky. What happens if I fix the time and look at all of the data points at this time? So what is my data structure? What do I get now? I get something which is the size d times 1. So this is essentially equivalent to the timing attack. But what is the difference between this and the timing attack? When we did timing attack, we knew that our data was inside the trace. When we're fixing, are they related? Yeah, we had to align. Stop asking are they related. We have to align the traces exactly to fit one over the other perfectly well. It's a signal engineering challenge. Don't have time to talk about it today. You have to align them very, very well. Oh yeah, and they're using the same key. But I want to tell you, if I fix the time and I look at this set of measurements over time, it's equivalent to the timing attack with one serious gotcha that most of the time it's going to be completely worthless. So this time, completely worthless. This time, useless, garbage. This time, can't use it. This time, complete bollocks. There's only one or maybe 2 or 3 places in the trace which are what the Gratz book calls very cleverly the correct time. And this one point in time, if I would look at this point in time, then I could do the timing attack that we did previously. So I have a huge set of optional places to do my timing attack. I don't know where the actual computation is happening, right? So if I could find this point, I could do a timing attack. I don't know where this point is, but don't worry, we can just solve it by throwing lots of data at the problem. So don't worry. I just want to share with you this problem that there is going to be some challenge here that most of our measurements are completely garbage, completely unrelated to the secret. It's not exactly a timing attack, right? But we can use the same method I developed using the timing attack. So now